Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this press conference for the Energy Security Summit. You all probably already know that I was born in Nigeria, and that as a child, I dreamed of coming to this country to follow the apparently improbable dream of telling stories on the screen. Now, I have had the incredible opportunity to do so in so many fulfilling ways. But the country that I find myself in today seems to be moving further and further away from the country that that young girl dreamed of. Children born here in America, ripped away from the only home that they know, deported. Students who dreamed of bringing their skills to this country, stolen from the streets, taken to hellhole detention centers, and people who had been granted citizenship, whisked away in darkness to an infamous El Salvador prison. To become an American citizen is a cherished opportunity for every immigrant. I know that it is a culmination of sweat, blood, and tears, because I personally went through that journey of naturalization not so long ago. Now, fear permeates communities across the country. Now, the dreams of millions around the world are crushed. We were promised a democracy with a credo of liberty and justice for all. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. knew we had work to do to perfect this ideal, but he dared to dream, and we dreamt with him. He told us that the arc of the moral universe is long, but that it bends towards justice. But what is inevitable can only happen with our participation as Americans in the ballot box, with laws, and even when our voices shake, by speaking out. Until January 2025, for the first time, communities that had been left behind from the American dream were experiencing economic and environmental justice opportunities with the Inflation Reduction Act. It is a true climate justice law. That law, many others, and environmental regulations are being besieged by a president who believes that his every want should magically become the law of the land. That is not how the Constitution works. We are a nation of people with liberty and justice for all. We have due process with our courts, and we have a Congress that passes laws. I'm reminded of words I had the honor of speaking when I got to play civil rights lawyer Mira Couture on Star Trek stage, New Worlds. You knew it was coming. But the words were, do you know why I love the law? Because the law is not a mirror to society. A law is an ideal, a beacon to show us how to be our better selves. And you have the opportunity today to do just that. We are here today to make sure that key laws enacted by Congress are upheld, for in order to achieve true equality, we must solve and work toward justice for all. Yes, even people coming in late at this moment. My name is Yetide Badaki. I'm humbled and honored to be here serving as Master of Ceremonies to this incredible group of elected officials who are also veterans for this Elected Officials Protecting America press conference. And they will most surely make a better case for the aforementioned than I. So to start, I introduce a man you all know and love, the man responsible for this summit, and Maine State Representative, Marine Combat Veteran, President of EOPA, Alex Cornell de Houx.
Thank you, Yetide. Your story is truly, truly inspiring. And it's amazing to see how you've brought your story into the film and re in life, and inspiring people as it continues the cycle. So thank you. When it came to climate and energy and water security, I started to get to know this issue from a personal and firsthand experience, really during my time when I was deployed, and particularly in Afghanistan. During that time, I would run with the Afghan women athletes, and we would be working with a lot of female journalists to empower the society there. Unfortunately, when we decided to leave, none of them had paperwork. So they went, I'll be left behind. The Taliban went to one of their houses, took their running shoes and beat one of the ladies up. And they said they'd be back. And we were like, we absolutely can't let this happen. And so I called my friends in the Ukrainian military, particularly the lieutenant colonel. And she called her general. That general is now the director of intelligence for Ukraine. And they sent their special forces in and saved at least 400 of the folks we worked with directly, and a total of 4,000. And this is a story to illustrate the resiliency, the dedication, and the caring Ukraine has had for us and the world, and particularly when it came to conflicts that revolved around energy security. And sadly, Ukraine is the ultimate example of this. Because if there's any place in the world that illustrates the dangers of climate and energy security, it is Ukraine. Because in 2014, when Putin went in and took Crimea and Donbass and other places, Europe and the US just stood still. And the major reason that happened is because they were so dependent on a dictator's oil and gas. And so as a result, he was able to literally just walk in and take Crimea. Fortunately, the Ukrainians put up a fight, and unfortunately, then not that long after, the full-scale invasion happened. This time, we weren't as dependent on oil, but it was still a factor. Europe still spent $400 per person feeding the war machine of Putin on gas and oil, right? So literally the bombs and bullets that they're raining down in Ukraine are being paid for by us because of our dependency on the single source of energy. However, Ukraine is also amazingly resilient. They've installed 1.5 gigawatts worth of solar within the time of the war. That's equivalent to about a nuclear power plant and a half worth of clean energy that's distributed. Russia could never take out all the distributed clean energy across Ukraine with solar. It's resilient, and you can repair it in a day. When it comes to the wind turbines, they built 19 wind turbines 60 miles from the front line, and all of them are still standing, because trying to take a wind turbine out is like trying to hit a toothpick in a field. The missile that can take it out costs more than the wind turbine. So the distributed microgrids with solar and wind and clean energy are much more resilient, and we are seeing it as a living example in Ukraine. However, the US is still dependent on fossil fuels. And unless we upgrade our refineries to the tune of $150 to $200 billion, we will still be dependent on fossil fuels. We cannot be energy secure as long as we are dependent on fossil fuels. Because if you took that same investment and put it on offshore wind could power the US twice over, and that's an abundant source of energy that's prosperous and continuous and doesn't depend on a foreign entity, particularly dictators, because majority of OPEC are all dictators, for that source of energy. So then we can control our own energy dominance, if we want to use the administration's terms here, right? Because that's how we do it. We become secure by bringing locally grown energy here. And Ukraine has shown us how to do that, and has shown the world that you can do that even in a combat zone. The other part of this is the Inflation Reduction Act has provided an amazing opportunity for the US to lead the world in this and make the world a more safer place, a more prosperous place, and a healthier place. These tax incentives are making a real difference in communities across the US, right? The manufacturing in the United States went like this. We transform manufacturing. In Georgia, $15 billion alone of investment coming in between batteries and EV cars. This is something it would be unbelievably tragic to lose, but not tragic just because of the numbers. It's because each one of those investments represents a quality job. And it also represents to the world that we're becoming more secure and not dependent on foreign energy, which are literally feeding the bombs and bullets into Ukraine and other conflicts around the world. So when we look at what's happening in Congress right now, particularly with the electric vehicle standards, it's a huge step in transitioning the US and the world to fully electric vehicles, which creates the demand signal for the supply chains to keep going and our energy security. Because if we don't have that demand signal, the critical mineral manufacturing, refining, and extraction isn't going to happen in a responsible way. So even that tax credit is directly tied to our national security. Well, the EV tax credit as well as the standards, right? That creates the demand signal to increase it responsibly. Because if we don't, the rest of the world's going to continue on it. But the reality is the US has the largest economy in the world, and we need to be able to be part of that and say, here's how we extract the minerals responsibly, here's how we refine it, so we're not dependent on 90% of them coming from China, right? And that's not a situation we want to be in, because we do not warrant autocratic nations controlling fossil fuels that then subjugate other countries. And that's what the fossil fuel industry would prefer, because it's a lot easier to control one person than it is a democracy of folks. And so the wonderful thing about clean energy, it's very democratic, right? It's everywhere. And so what we'd love to do here is encourage Congress to ensure that we keep the clean vehicle standards coming from California, because as California goes, so does the rest of the United States, and so does the world, because it is now the fourth largest economy in the world, right? So from an economic perspective, from a health perspective, and a national security perspective, we need to protect the EV standards, we need to protect the IRA tax credits, and we need to protect our people and planet from the dangers of fossil fuels. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Always inspired after you speak. Next up, we have Deborah Loomis, former Senior Advisor for Climate Change, Office of the Secretary of the Navy, Washington, D.C., and Navy veteran.
Good morning. As Yetide said, I served as the first senior advisor for climate change for the Navy and Marine Corps. Hoorah. I'm okay, we can do that too. One team, one fight. I'm a 21-year Navy veteran, almost 5-year Navy civilian. And so coming to what was a political appointment was like coming home. I literally came back to the same office that I retired out of. And it was, so I was deeply, deeply embedded in the mission of the Navy and Marine Corps. I drafted the first, along with a working group of about over 100 people from across the entire organization, we drafted our first climate change strategy for the Navy and Marine Corps. And recently, senior Department of Defense and Department of the Navy officials have been making pretty flashy statements and videos, repealing that policy and saying, we don't do climate change. Well, we don't do climate change does you. Our strategy was clear. We were not starting from scratch. These were not newfangled initiatives. We were building and accelerating efforts that the Navy and Marine Corps and all the services had been promoting for decades. The first mention of climate and national security came from George H.W. Bush back in 1991. It was in seminal security documents starting in 2008, recognizing climate as a national security threat across Republican and Democratic administrations. So we weren't starting from scratch, we weren't doing something new, and we were very clear that everything we would do was going to be 100% mission aligned and mission centered. That was our North Star. And when people would ask me, oh, what trade-offs are you going to make between climate change and mission? I would say none, period. And if you think we are, please come see me, because we will not do that. I would also say very clearly that I was doing my job in a way that I thought any Republican or Democratic administration, and most importantly, the American taxpayer, would be proud of and would be aligned with, because that's my job. That was my job. So what kinds of things did we do? What was this woke agenda that we pursued? I'll give you just a few examples. It was software to optimize ship routes so they could cross the ocean more efficiently using less gas. Same software to optimize logistics and refueling for multiple ships and carrier strike groups. It was unmanned aerial refuelers so that you would have a tanker up in the air that didn't have a pilot in harm's way and could stay up in the air longer, providing fuel to more pilots, more missions. It was leveraging our land, leasing it out to utility companies, private energy developers to develop solar that would feed us in a crisis and feed defense communities clean energy. We've massive investments to upgrade our electrical infrastructure, our electric grid. Little known fact, a place like Naval Station Norfolk loses power on average 150 times per year. That's not just climate change, that's a combination of things. That's aging infrastructure coupled with flooding, et cetera, but it doesn't matter. We can't have that, because when you have a power surge on a submarine, that can cost you $12 million each time. For a DDG, that would cost you $5 million each time. So we were very serious about getting our power quality, our reliability, and our grid infrastructure stabilized. That helps us in a climate scenario, and that just helps us make us better warfighters. We achieved the first net zero energy base at Marine Corps Logistics Base Albany, and that was something that had been a decade in the making. That's not something that we just did overnight. And how did that look? That involved partnering with the county landfill to tap their methane gas, partnering with Procter & Gamble to use their waste steam, solar on parking lots. It was an all of the above approach, and that base came together. Why? Because they saved hundreds of thousands of dollars per month on their electric bill. And it was great for the climate. I could go on. I will just say a few more things. The Navy is as a naval service, coastal service. We have dozens of installations that are facing severe erosion, threats from storm surge, sea level rise, et cetera. In places like the Pacific Missile Range facility in Hawaii, it's kind of on the side of a cliff, and it's a missile range facility. You have very key telemetry radar equipment on the side of this cliff, and it is facing extreme erosion. So we funded projects to stem that erosion. Naval Station Mayport, there's a facility that houses ordnance, right? Again, that it's really susceptible to storm surge. So we're investing in things like living shorelines to protect that ordnance from falling into the ocean, roadways from falling into the ocean. At a desert base like Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake, 1.1 million acres, very, very dry. When we had some of these, now we're seeing these atmospheric rivers, when those hit, $60 to $100 million worth of damage to roads. So we're investing in things like natural infrastructure. How can we slow this water so it doesn't take out our roads and doesn't prevent us from doing the critical mission of that base? I could go on, but I think the themes that I'm trying to highlight for you is we did things like partner with private capital, partner with states and communities, all to make our bases, our systems more efficient and more lethal. And I think that's what the American taxpayer expects and deserves.
We don't do climate change does you. I want that on a t-shirt. Thank you so much, Deborah. Now we have Dr. Pat Spearman, former Nevada State Senator President pro tempore, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel.
Thank you. And it's quite an honor for me to be here to discuss my feelings about climate change, but more importantly, why what fuels my passion about making sure we're doing all that we can with renewable energy, renewable resources. And so the climate change is doing us now. We need to make sure that we stop that. Let me say something about this whole notion about woke being something bad. Because that's, when I heard that the first time I heard that, I was like, well, you need to be woke to drive. You need to be woke to work. You need, there are a number of things you can't do, sleep. And so I don't understand what people's problem is with woke. And I ask people that, what's your problem with woke? What's your problem with woke? So yeah, am I woke? Yes, I am. I am awake and I intend to stay that way. As was previously stated, I am former Senator Pat Spearman, former President Pro-Tempore of the Nevada State Senate. I want to talk not about the statistics, but I want to talk about the real impact that remaining on fossil fuels is having on real people. When I was at the Pentagon, our team adopted the Ortho Award at Walter Reed, and when we would change from day to night, we had 2 days, we had a 2-day break. And what we would do is we would go and get several of them on a bus and we would take them around Washington. You'd be surprised how many of them had never been to Washington, D.C., had never seen any of the monuments. And they were so excited and they were just, oh my God, wow. And a lot of them were from very small towns in rural areas. And they would be, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, what stuck in my mind was a gentleman that I was walking with, he and his fiance, and he was in a wheelchair. He's a double amputee. And he was so jovial. And I'm thinking, wow, you have to have, it's got to be a psyche of iron. And he turned to his fiance and he said, baby, show the colonel, show her our prom picture, show our prom picture. And I said, your prom picture? He said, yeah. He said, well, went to prom and, a couple months after prom, I joined the Army and then came over to, and I said, wow. She showed me the prom picture and here's a kid, 18, 6'2", with his girlfriend, now fiance, and he's in a wheelchair and he's less than 5 feet tall. Think about that. Think about that. When we talk about moving away from fossil fuels because of the impact it has on people, one of the things that I like to do is go to various events where veterans are, especially women veterans, because so many times we are invisible once we leave the service. And I was at an event for women veterans, and after the event, this young lady came up to me, several young people came up to me, and when I say young, I'm talking about under 30. Okay. And this one young lady said, Senator, Senator. And I was looking at her and her eyes looked different. And she said, yeah, my eyes look different. I said, I'm just trying to, how did this happen? And she said, I was in Iraq and I was in a Humvee and our convoy that was carrying oil was ran over an IED. I said, wow. She said, our Humvee wasn't in the kill zone, but the blast of the IV flipped us 5 times. And she said, and each time it flipped, my head hit the side. My head hit the top. She said, my head was, it was like a ball bouncing around in that iron contraption. And I was like, wow. And so she said, and so now, she said, I went to college and I wanted to be a business person, but I've got TBI, traumatic brain injury. And the results of that, it's not going away. It's not going away. Why do we need to move away from fossil fuels and make sure that we are doing all we can to protect the planet, to protect the environment, and making sure we are advancing renewable energies? I want to tell you a story briefly about the mother that I spoke to in Richmond, Virginia, whose 18-year-old daughter, all she wanted to do was join the service. Her grandfather was in the service, her father was in the service, and from a little girl up, she was, I'm going to join the service. I'm going to join the Army. I'm going to join the Army. And she, at 17, she was in ROTC, junior ROTC in high school. 17, she joined the delayed entry program. When she was 18, she went to the MEP station, raised her hand, took the oath, and went off to basic. After basic, she went to Fort Lee, and she was assigned as assigned to the logistics department. Her mom said, oh, thank God, she's not going to be anywhere near the front lines, and she was just really happy. As soon as she finished that, she was deployed immediately to Iraq. And the mother said, last time I talked to my daughter was just before she went out on a convoy. And she said, Mom, she said, I don't know why we're here. The people don't like us. And she said she was crying. She said, I don't think I'm going to make it back. I don't think I'm going to make it back. And she said, I kept telling her, don't say that. Don't say that. We're praying for you. You're going to make it. She said, no, ma'am, I'm not going to make it. She said, don't say that. You're going to make it back. And she was on the phone with her. She stopped talking. The mother stopped talking, and she listened to the sobs of her daughter. And she said, well, Mom, I have to go now because the convoy is getting ready to leave. That's the last time she spoke to her daughter. Day, 2 days, a week went by. She had not heard from her. Until a little bit more than a week, the chaplain came to her door and told her that her daughter had been killed in an IED attack. And she said, I heard the words, but I couldn't fathom. I couldn't fathom my beautiful daughter. It was just a few weeks before her 19th birthday. She said, I could not fathom that. She said, and they sent her remains back to me. She said, but it wasn't my daughter. She said, I don't know what was in that bag, but it really wasn't a body. It was pieces. It wasn't my daughter. And so for the people who tell me that we can't do this, I say, go and look the mother in the eye of that 18-year-old, and in history, that's how old she will be forever. Go look the young lady in the eye who was about 28 and had TBI, and her eyes wouldn't stop moving, and she had TBI. Go look at them in the eye. Go and look in the eye of the young man who was a paraplegic. Go look at him and tell him you can't do it. Well, I say this, we who are here today, and those of you who are listening to this press conference, we have a moral obligation to move away from fossil fuels, not just because they protect dictators and they enhance their war chest, but because it is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. The people that don't want to do it, I say, go join the military. You go fight in a war. But many of the people who are claiming that we can't do it are the ones that didn't serve in anything and would never serve in anything. Do we need to move away from fossil fuels? Yes, we do. We've got to protect our human treasure. Do we need to move away from fossil fuels? Yes, we do, because we have got to stop funding dictators' wishes. Do we need to move away from fossil fuels? Yes, we do, because the other reason is renewable energy creates more jobs. It increases the supply chain. But more important, don't miss this point. More important, it's about the people that we lose. 6 out of every 10 deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan were somehow related to oil, guarding it, moving it, offloading it, something. How many more must die because we can't curb our appetite for fossil fuels? Thank you.
Well, thank you for those incredible stories and comments, truly. Next up, we have Deborah Sariñana, New Mexico State Rep, District 21, Air Force Medic Veteran.
The hard one to follow because New Mexico, where I'm from, is a big fossil fuel state and we have oil and gas everywhere. So, but thank you for being here. Good morning, everyone. I am Debbie Sariñana. I represent House District 21 in Bernalillo County in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And also an Air Force veteran, like she said. I am the vice chair, a little bit about me. I'm the vice chair of Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee in the House of Representatives. I am the chair of Science and Technology and the vice chair of Veterans, Military and Veterans Affairs in our interim committee session. Over the last 9 years, I've been the only female in the House, in the legislature, and this year I became the only veteran in the House of Representatives. So if we know anybody in New Mexico who is a veteran and wants to run, don't come to me. In New Mexico, we also have four bases, 3 Air Force and 1 Army, and 2 national labs. We're very, very energy technology-based state. A few statistics. In New Mexico, we are ranked 7th in the nation in wind generation. We are 3rd in the nation in total energy production. We are 2nd in the nation in total oil production and 37th in CO2 emissions. Our largest source of power generation is wind. We are on the wind corridor in the United States, with natural gas coming in 2nd. New Mexico is a very environmentally passionate state. We have 310 days of sunshine. Our clean energy portfolio is solar, wind, and geothermal. But 59% of our energy, our power generation, comes from fossil fuel. But it's 40% of our budget. And but what we do have, we've been working in Legislative Finance Committee on taking the money we get from gas and oil, it's billions every year, and putting it in funds so that within hopefully 10 years, we will be completely, we will not have to rely on fossil fuels. And depending on what happens with stocks, with what's happening with this administration, we should be able to do in 10 years so that we don't get on this roller coaster that we're constantly on with having to pull money from our different agencies. But as soon as we can be non-reliant on fossil fuel, we will be in a good place. But right now we are totally reliant on it. Let's see. With this fossil fuel friendly administration, oil and gas extraction is expected to grow, and thousands more children and families will be forced to breathe life-threatening fossil fuel pollutants. It's hard to be in New Mexico and be a legislator because gas and oil is so powerful, and they fund a lot of races, both sides of the aisle. So getting anything passed is difficult. But I want to tell you about Jefferson Elementary School in Hobbs. At Jefferson Elementary School is a pre-K to 5th grade school. So we're talking about kids 4-year-old to 10 years old. It was established in 1956, long before the oil and gas boom. And in Jefferson Elementary, there are 161 pump jacks. You know what a pump jack is? Looks like a horse, looks like a microphone. Pump jacks, 161 within a mile, that little elementary, and 48 within half a mile. So these kids, no matter which way the wind is blowing, they are exposed to benzene, cancer-causing, birth defects, high hospitalization rates, respiratory, nosebleeds, rashes on a daily basis. These kids, 6 to 10-year-olds, every day they're exposed to this because many of them also live very close to their school. And the hardest part of being a legislator is watching on this committee where they have the representatives from their districts sitting there, and they don't do anything. They don't say anything. They don't see it as wrong because money is the most important thing about the Permian Basin. This is why we have to make sure our federal government continues its federal climate investments. All of the provisions and funding from the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and our environmental regulations must be restored for the future of the people and their prosperity. In New Mexico, we have about $4 billion coming for 924 different projects between the IRA and the yeah. One project, a Department of Transportation, we had 38 million coming for projects, and 12 million of that was spent on EVs. We're looking at putting an EV charging station every 50 miles on our freeway, and it's a big state. We're the 5th biggest state in the country. And 12 billion was allotted for the first phase. It was completed. We have quite a few charging stations all over our state. You can get all over New Mexico, as big as it is, and find a charging station. I have an EV, so I travel a lot. But phase 2 was 26 million, and it was frozen. So these small towns that we were going to next, they were looking forward to having a charging station, have some economic development from this, and it has just been frozen. So that has hurt us quite a bit. The Department of Agriculture received money for renewable energy. The Environment Protection Agency received money for reforestation centers. With all our fires in New Mexico 2 years ago, we had fires that covered 997,000 acres, two merged right above one of our reforestation centers. And luckily, we had these brave people who came to the reforestation center, took all of the small trees and took them close to Albuquerque. But they actually risked their lives to get those. But we need reforestation centers. These centers will cover all of the Southwest as far as reforesting it from all the extreme wildfires and floods we've had. Department of Energy received money for clean water. We are a drought state. Homeland Security received money for environmental remediation. We have mines, uranium mines and coal mines that they're looking at opening up again. Not coal mines, uranium mines and copper mines. For one EV, it takes 198 pounds of copper to build an EV. So we need those mines, but we also need to remediate. And the Department of Interior, we had money for broadband. We have, like I said, a big state, very rural state, but we're trying to get to that last mile. So that's where the money would come from. So again, all these provisions and funding from the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law and environmental regulations must be restored for the future of our people, for their prosperity, health, and energy security. This is why we need to make sure our federal government continues with federal climate investments. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Next up, I believe, Alex, you wanted to do a new intro? Or perhaps not. All right, then I'll move on. Next up, we have Sandra Scott from Georgia State, District 76, Army veteran, and she's coming up right now.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Sandra G. Scott from the great state of Georgia, represented House District 76. I'm also the chairwoman for the National Foundation of Women Legislators. And it's good to be here with you all this morning. Now, the Inflation Reduction Act offers significant rebates for consumer clean energy technologies, such as solar panels, electric vehicles, heat pumps, and energy efficient appliances. The Office of Economic Policy showed more than 41,000 Nevada families benefited from more than $151 million in IRA tax credits to lower the cost of clean energy and energy efficiency upgrades to their homes during 2023. Everyone has the right to breathe fresh air, drink clean water, and grow up in an energy secure America. EVs are critically important to help clean up toxic air pollution that affects environmental justice community disproportionately the most. The IRA has made our state a leader in clean technology manufacturing and a hub for EV manufacturing. As a result of the IRA, Georgia has seen more than $15 billion in new investments and over 11,000 good-paying jobs. But that failure has been threatened by the uncertainty surrounding the president's policies. Rivian, an American electric EV manufacturer, has put its planned $5 billion Georgia investment on hold. We have had one battery plant company had canceled its plan, a manufacturing plant. The federal clean energy investment, which have been growing our economy with certainty, and all environmental protections need to be restored and continue so we can reach environmental equality and energy security. Now, in Clayton County, where I live, we're taking important local steps to be part of that momentum. Our school system is exploring ways to modernize their bus fleet with electric buses, reducing emissions and protecting the health of our children. We're working with partners to expand EV charging stations, making it easier for residents to choose electric vehicles. And we're prioritizing clean energy education because real change starts with knowledge and community involvement. But let's be honest, our work is far from done. We need stronger state support for equitable clean energy. In the state of Georgia, our House and Senate caucus, they don't really do a lot of passing of bills dealing with clean energy. But we must keep fighting for the right to have more clean energy bills laid out in policy to make Georgia one of the top and leading competitors within this market. Just after the inauguration, the new president issued an executive order that abruptly stopped investments in climate crisis measures. While some programs have been restored, all funding streams for environmental justice communities have not. By mid-March, the EPA laid out a roadmap of 31 steps it will take, targeted issues including climate crisis, related regulations, power plant and greenhouse gas reporting requirements, and support for electric vehicles. Again, I'm State Representative Sandra G. Scott, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Scott. Now we have rounding out Daniel Ramos, Adelantó Mayor Pro Tem, California, and Navy veteran.
All right, great day, everyone. Great day. It is an honor and privilege to be here with you all. As she mentioned, Vice Mayor Daniel Ramos from the amazing city of Adelantó, California, and Navy veteran as well. As an elected official and veteran, I am passionate about what the EOPA stands for and represents. As the Vice Chair of Energy and Environment for all of Southern California, representing 191 cities, the 6 major counties, and 19 million residents, I'm passionate about the air that we breathe, the water that we all drink, and the spaces that we all choose to live, work, and play in. California now, as the 4th world's largest economy, is now the 4th world's largest economy. We need more climate crisis mitigation programs. Our state's ability to deliver water will be cut by up to 23% in the next 20 years. And for all my Navy veterans here and watching and listening in, if there's one thing that we took away from the Navy is water is life. That reduction that I just mentioned represents enough water to supply almost 2 million homes for that year, almost 2 million. The IRA and BIL are strengthening my community and communities around the world, around our country, against these climate threats. I strongly urge our administration to listen to the voices of those who stood the watch. Listen to the voices of those who have truly seen what poor climate looks like, tastes like, and smells like. Listen to the voices of those who have fought to protect our country and our lands. President Trump made a comment going back maybe 2-3 months ago, and he said something to the extent of, the golden era is not possible without the Golden State. He's absolutely right. You're absolutely right, President Trump. The golden era is not possible without the Golden State, and we all know the Golden State is the state of California. I strongly urge that you restore these funds that will protect energy and environment throughout our country. Now, speaking a little bit about the amazing city of Adelantó. Adelantó is a growing, diverse community facing urgent environmental challenges, especially with water quality. High levels of PFAS chemicals, also known as forever chemicals, threaten our health, and we must act now. The Justice 40 Initiative, for those of you that do not know about the Justice 40 Initiative, the Justice 40 Initiative, along with the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, provide crucial federal resources for clean water. It allocates 40% of that funding for low-income communities and underserved communities like Adelantó. Helps us with clean water, sustainable infrastructure, and green spaces. We must actively advocate to protect and maximize these investments for all communities as such. As Adelantó expands, we need sustainable practices, renewable energy, improved transportation, more importantly, stricter regulations to safeguard our environment and health. Collaboration with local leaders such as ourselves, organizations such as the EOPA, and residents is essential. It's a must. Our communities, such as other communities, are vulnerable to climate impacts like heat and drought, which worsen health and disparities. We must push for resilient measures to protect our future. This fight, ladies and gentlemen, is not about red or blue or about right or left. It's not. It's about health, dignity, and a better future. Something that I know all veterans sacrificed so that others wouldn't have to sacrifice those things. Let's work together right now to ensure these vital laws and programs deliver real change, not only for the city of Adelantó, but for every growing city across the United States of America. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Daniel Ramos. As someone with a name like Yetide Badaki, it is a gripe when someone says my name wrong. So that's it for now. Right now, we are going to take some questions. We have a couple right here that are prepared, and we will see if any further ones continue to roll in from the press. All right, so first question we have on here is, how will EV sales, manufacturing, and our air be impacted if EPA clean car standards are rolled back? And we can just go down the line with this.
I'm not going to talk too much about car standards, but I just want to reiterate some of what I said in my earlier comments. Why are EVs and their technology that they're spawning important for the military? So someone like the Marine Corps, they are in the process of hybridizing their tactical vehicles. And so right now, the medium tactical vehicle replacement, we had about a third or a half and progressing towards hybridizing all of them over the next couple of years. That saves 10 to 15% of energy. Why is that important? So that when, so you can go further on a tank of gas pretty clearly. We were investing in anti-idle technologies and batteries powering electronics and combat systems so that that vehicle could be doing silent watch, i.e. not having a diesel engine causing noise or a heat signature, which make it a target in a fight. So those are the types of technologies and why electric vehicles, why we have hybrid ships. We've got 12 different platforms that are hybridized for our ships and our tactical vehicles. And it is about combat power and lethality and a modern force.
So I guess the first thing that I would say is that it disrupts the global supply chain. Because we're talking about EVs from the standpoint of California, Nevada, Georgia, but it's about more than that. The supply chain was created and being perfected over the last 10 years. So what does that mean for local communities? If the supply chain is disrupted, what does that mean in terms of job creation? Most jobs in the renewable energy sector start at $25 plus benefits. And that's more than you can make, no shade to McDonald's, but that's more than you can make at a fast food establishment. When we start talking about doing away with the EVs, we're also talking about slowing down technology. If we ever want to be the leader in something, wouldn't you think that we would want to continue and expand as opposed to contract? And so the whole notion about doing away with that, I've said it before and I'll say it again, is admirable for its asininity alone.
Thank you for the question. I am an EV owner, and in New Mexico, we have the clean fuel standards, clean car and truck standards, and we have a governor who is passionate about the environment, and she has pushed EV sales. We have a great stock. We are getting more. We have charging stations all over our state, so that we are ready. As an EV owner, it is the best car I've ever had. If you have one, you have to try one at least. I can go from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, 60 miles on $3. When you have to go back to gas and fill up, it's a little tough. But it protects our air. I had a bill this year that we tried to get EV school buses, and it was made it all the way through until the end, and it didn't get through the Senate. But we had another bill that we squeaked through that said we can fund those school buses. And once kids get on those school buses, if you've ever been on a school bus, I know as a teacher, I hated going on field trips because of the school bus ride. But you can smell all the emissions. It's so loud you can't hear anything. But these new EV school buses are quiet, and the kids get to school actually calm. It was amazing. But we have to keep doing this. We have to make everyone aware of how important they are, and the standards the states can handle. We can keep going by the state, but I'm hoping the push is there. We do need everything clean air, clean energy, and EVs are one of the best things around that we have. I don't know, come to New Mexico if you'd like to see the real thing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if the EV sales in the manufacturer drops in Georgia, we will face a lot of pressure because, as you know, Georgia are making EV cars now. So one thing that we have to do is get more charging stations in Georgia. We will have to get more charging stations in Georgia so that we could continue on with the clean air and energy. Like I said, a lot of our school systems have gotten the buses, in which that is a big help because, like she said, the kids come to school a little bit calmer. I don't know if it's because they don't have to smell all the toxic fumes on their way to school or what, but the kids do get off the bus and be a little bit more calmer when they riding on those EV buses. But it would make the jobs and the things that the EV manufacturing companies, because we are hiring a lot of people in Georgia dealing with the EVs. So that would put a hold on the jobs. So we would need to make sure that we keep our EVs market going, because if the sales and the manufacturing stop, it would put a large impact. And right now, with the way the economy goes and people losing their jobs every day, we need to make sure that we continue to roll out EV and roll out clean emission standards in the state of Georgia.
Thank you. I appreciate the question and definitely agree with all the comments made by my colleagues here. I want to touch a little bit on more of the pollution side, right? If City of Adelantó, the Highway 395, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with 395. In case you're not, Highway 395 runs all the way from the Canadian border, technically all the way down to Tijuana, Mexico. So it's a major artery in and through California and other states. It runs through the heart of the City of Adelantó, right? 477,000 vehicles go north and south through the City of Adelantó monthly. 40% of those vehicles are semi-trucks. What is that doing to the air, right? How many of you, show of hands, how many of you have children, right? They're breathing that air, right? How many of us have elderly parents that live with us or in the city that we live in? They're breathing that air. What is it doing to the disabilities of veterans that have asthma or respiratory type of disabilities, right? It's shortening our lives. So we must continue down the road of this EV fight and pushing EVs because it's going to lead to a healthier future. It's going to lead to healthier children. Maybe our parents stay alive 10 more years, right? I want to see my dad alive 10 more years. I'd love to have my mom, and my mom actually lives in New Mexico in Las Cruces, right? My mom moved from California to New Mexico because of the cleaner air, right? So thank you, New Mexico, for doing what you guys are doing. I get the slowing down the tech and being less advanced. I get that. But if we don't continue down the path of going EV, then just consider our lives every day to be shortened because we're breathing in these bad toxins and this bad air. Thank you.
So when I was in the Marine Corps as a grunt, I would have absolutely loved to have an hybrid Humvee back then. Now it's the medium tactical vehicle or the joint tactical, because we could sit and patrol and actually have AC and be silent instead of telling the whole world, "Hey, we're here to watch you." So it is a tactical advantage, which is wonderful to have, means we win-win-win when we transform our economy and our national security apparatus to electric. Particularly later on, I ended up being promoted on the DGG 1000, which is a hybrid destroyer that has enough power on it to power the city of Bath, Maine. But the cool thing about it is, for the first time, we could say, quote unquote, "Hey, Scotty, direct the power to the weapon systems." Because with just straight up diesel, you can't transfer and tell where the power can go. With hybrid electric, you can say, "Hey, we want it towards the directed energy system now." And that's a huge warfighting advantage. Similarly, I was on the USS Macon Island. It's the equivalent to most countries' aircraft carriers. And the range increase from the hybrid was tremendous. And in the ability to have presence in the South China Sea, that's a strategic advantage, right? It also means less refueling, which puts the refuelers and others in less danger. And then, as we've seen in Ukraine, what has revolutionized many of the war tactics there? It's drones. And what are most drones powered by? They're electric, right? So the future of warfighting capabilities is much more around electric than it will ever be with fossil fuels. And we really saw this, and because what it's doing is it's giving much more flexibility in our ability to be fossil fuel independent. When we were on a patrol one time, we saw a line of cars, trucks, and trailers, like as dusk was happening, it's really as far as the eye could see. We were like, "Why are you lined up?" So we got to the front and began to realize they were lining up to refuel their vehicles because Iraq was so dependent on this single source of energy. And it really struck me, they were willing to risk their lives to be in that line. And then we're like, wait, the US and everyone else is lined up to the dictators in the world for that same source of energy. And that got me thinking like, hey, this is how when you democratize the energy source to clean energy, you make us more secure. And the ironic thing is, and relatively dangerous, is that China knows this, and they've invested in electric vehicles tremendously, right? And so if the US reduces our standards, right? If we roll back the EPA standards, we are essentially saying, hey, China, you can now lead the world, and the rest of the world will line up to you for electric vehicles. And so it's vitally important that we keep these standards so the US economy continues to lead the world, so we can make a secure form of energy that makes us prosper and protects our health and economy at the same time.
Thank you all for those deeply insightful answers. Also, thank you, Alex. I always love a Star Trek reference. That was, hey, Scotty, loved it. Okay, so we have a question that just came in. As veterans, how can you let people know about the security issue when they are focused on local prices increasing at the grocery store?
Yeah, by being in places like this, I mean, I take the question, and we were talking a lot of this on this panel yesterday about reclaiming the narrative around all of this. I mean, we hear green news scam, we hear a lot of, making fun of this, and it is absolutely patriotic to want to develop our industries, to want to protect our soldiers and Marines and sailors and everyone else who is guarding those fuel convoys and say enough, to want to lead the world, lead China and everyone else. Like, this is America first. This is America at its greatest. And telling that story, and veterans can be on the front lines, if you will, of telling that story. And there's other communities that can join us. We really need to reclaim this narrative.
Thank you for the question. So the question was, how do we get people to see renewable energy when they're looking at the price?
Groceries.
Yeah, groceries. And so, I always say to people, the price of groceries is a direct result of not only where it was made, but how it got from point A to point B, and that's transportation. And so as long as we are dependent upon foreign oil, fossil fuels, there's a fluctuation there. And it may take a while for the increase to get to the grocery store, but make no mistake about it, it gets there. And so that's one of the things that I think we should be concerned about. The other thing that I say to people, and I tell my own story, since I left the Pentagon, I usually have a hospital visit at least once a year because of respiratory issues. I'm an asthmatic, extreme asthmatic, and the air that I breathe is very important. And I remember going to the hospital one time, and my nephew saying, Auntie, are you going to live? So you want to know why it's important? It's important to people like me, but it also makes, we don't do the right thing, it's going to make your cucumber prices go up.
Thank you for the question. I think I understand it, but in New Mexico, we are a big state. We have veterans all over the state. We transport them to the VA in Albuquerque. And the last time we met with some of our veterans, they said it takes so long to get here. There's so many yellow barrels or orange bells everywhere. And we finally sat down and said, yes, but think about all the great things we're doing here with the Inflation Reduction Act, all the things Biden is doing to make our state better for you, better in every way. And they're starting to see, oh yeah, okay, maybe it takes me another hour to get to Albuquerque, or out of 4 hours, maybe 5. But they're understanding that many veterans are understanding why this is important. And as far as food and prices, I think they understand that too, that everything that's being done with these acts and everything we're trying to do for our the United States Americans and our veterans will take time, will take energy, will take a little patience, but they're understanding this is for the good of everyone. And you just have to hang in there. I hate to say that word, I think it's been said before, but they know it's important. And as a veteran, you will stand in line, you will be there at 8 and not be seen till 12. But it takes resilience to be an American and be a veteran. And I believe they're understanding, and everyone is understanding that, yeah, maybe food's gonna cost more, but what is being achieved by all these, the Inflation Reduction Act, all the things that are happening.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. If I can get into your phone, Alex.
But the question was focused on with the stress in the grocery stores, why would folks care about national security when it comes to particularly electric vehicles?
Okay. Well, I could say in Georgia, and talking with veterans and being a veteran, Georgia have taken some, I'll say some path into providing veterans when they go to the VA, a farmer's market outside of the VA when veterans go. So what we are trying to do as Georgia is give our veterans other alternatives to getting food, because right now they do think that food is high, it is out of control. And they are looking for other means to be able to buy grocery. And when we talk about EV clean energy and what the infrastructure IRA money have done in Georgia is trying to improve the infrastructure. I could say our veterans want to hear something different. They want to hear something different. They are really concerned about their health. We have a lot of veterans that are on oxygen. We have a lot of veterans that have breathing conditions, and asthma is on the those of you that are not veterans, you have the same concern. It's the same concern for you all, because we have a lot of people that are not veterans that have oxygen machines. We have a lot of kids in school that suffer from asthma every day. A lot of people with COPD. We have a lot of people that are suffering from the results of the air that we breathe. So when you're talking to people and you're having your town hall meetings, you have to let them understand what the importance of the EV vehicles for. It is for to give us clean air, clean energy, and make the air better. We have better quality air, so they will be able to breathe better when they go outside. The kids will be able to play. Will it bring our food prices down? No. No, not at the moment. It would not bring your food price down, but you'll be able to eat healthier. Because like I said, our VA, we do provide a farmer's market for the veterans. But hopefully we could get people into doing more gardening, gardening at home, doing their own gardening. And then they will be able to eat better also if they start their own gardening practices.
Also, if you're spending less money on fuel, you'll have more money for roads.
That's right, because gas is very expensive in Georgia. We're looking at $3 and probably about 6 cents, $3.06 a gallon for gas. So, that is a lot. So if invested in EV vehicles, that will be a big help to you.
And the life cycle cost of the electric vehicle is
A lot less. Yes.
Lot fewer repairs necessary, and fewer moving parts, and so it's more economical.
Yes. Yes, and that means that they will be able to buy some grocery.
Yes, okay, it looks like we're, okay, so you will finish off this and then no more questions after that.
Thank you for the question, and to Mr. Berger, you hit it on the head, sir, and that's why you said you're 80 and you look 40. Absolutely, less gas, more money for groceries. I love this question. I'm going to touch on a few things and I'll be quick, Alex, because I know we need to wrap up. This question was actually asked in our workshop yesterday that we had when we went into our breakout sessions. I feel if we, as Americans, we want to actually be, if you can't sell me on my personal security, then you're not going to sell me on national security, right? And I feel that should be flip-flopped. If we worry about national security first, like our self-security will in turn follow that. How we can get these messages out, my biggest thing is through education, right? With real life examples and stories. Education, utilizing social media platforms, which reaches the masses within a click of a button, workshops, commercials, press conferences, such as what we're doing today, involving more organizations like the EOPA. Most importantly, every single state has MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, that I touched on yesterday as well. I wrote a little equation down last night. And it's kind of silly, but it makes sense, right? MPOs, Metropolitan Organizations, plus EOPA, or organizations as such, plus veterans will equal results. But you have to have them all in the same room at the same table together to get those results. So if we follow that crazy formula, I think we might start to get somewhere here in the near future.
Could not agree more. When we look at energy security, it's directly tied to everything we do today. So the moment we turn the light switch on is the moment it's energy security. And particularly, fossil fuels are one of the most volatile, unstable sources of energy we have. And this is horribly represented in Hawaii, right? Where 3/4 of the power coming into the homes of the Hawaiians from fossil fuels. And they have one of the highest electric bills in the nation. But we don't have to look far into the history and realize when Saudi Arabia put a blockade on our energy, we had shortages here, right? So having fossil fuels as the source of energy here for a majority of our energy directly impacts our prosperity and what we can spend on every single day. And the great thing about solar and wind is the cheapest form of energy. And so making the connection to the volatility, I mean, even the towns where the oil is, when you get below $60 a barrel, they bust, right? Around that age. 78 maybe is their happy point, but if it goes too high, they boom, and then it's going to go down again, and that town busts, and it leaves many people without jobs, and it's a boom and bust industry. And it's really sad for the people working in it because there's no stability there, right? Particularly for the secondary companies who get it. So what it means is for everyone on the ground is for our stability and our security and our health, we've absolutely got to transition to a form that we can have abundant power that's cheap and will power our homes and cars and even our AI systems that can create scary and amazing things at the same time, right? So it's a world in which, I'll go back to the Star Trek reference, right? They created clean, abundant energy that helped a vision of the future that is much more democratic and working together. So thank you.
Thank you all again. Love more Star Trek always. But I would like to thank all of you panelists. This has been incredible. It's been insightful and it's been inspiring with all the actionable items that we can take from this moment. And you all are veterans. I want to say to all of you, everyone that's listening in, all the veterans that are in this room, truly deeply from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for your service. Exactly. But I'm not leaving the rest of you out in the room. Thank you all for taking time out of your morning to be here with us to support and listen and to pick up what you can take with you. And I do believe Alex has some final comments he would like to share. Well, that's what they told me on the
We're
on
way,
the sheet.
we're way over time, so I think I could be quiet and we will head out to our next event. And thank you
Okay.
for being such a wonderful host here.
Oh, no, thank you all.